Curiosity's not a sin, Harry, but you should exercise caution.
There's a time strand. You're fraternizing with the enemy.
There's the Cruciatus curse.
And we'll celebrate a boy who was kind and honest and brave and true, right to the very end.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast, where you're doing chapter 31, The Third Task. We have Elizabeth with us.
Hello.
Hopefully you caught our last chapter where she gushed about the Pensieve.
The Pensieve is my favorite.
And gave a really cool rundown about Azkaban. But she's back with us for the third task, which is kind of a big deal. And I will not rant like I did on the second task.
I might rant a little bit.
Fair enough. There are some things I like and I dislike, but we'll get there. Mm-hmm. So, quickly running down the chapter for us, I like how Harry immediately tells Ron and Hermione everything from what happened in the last chapter. Important. We get practicing for the third task, also important. We learn that Harry's getting some daily letters from Sirius, a new Rita Skeeter article, a champion family meeting, and then, the third task itself.
Just a little thing.
Just kind of, sort of. So, going back to the beginning of this chapter, I did really like that it kind of kicks off with almost kind of a dark moment when Harry reality kind of kicks in for him for a second, and he realizes that he feels deep empathy with Neville.
Right. And
deep hate towards Voldy and those who put Neville in the position that he's in. And he has a specific quote about how his hate should be towards Voldy because, quote, he was the one who had torn these families apart.
Who had ruined all those lives.
Right.
And it's right. It just shows you the impact of dangerous people. How that, they might kill one person, but entire families and friends and communities get torn apart just because of that one death. And this is countless deaths, countless torture, pain for generations. It's deep.
I think
he's dark.
He's finally it's clicking. Not that he didn't know, because
right.
I think he knew, but now it's clicking on a deeper level that he's not the only one affected by this.
Yeah, I think it's part of showing his growing up. His mental capacity for empathy is expanding.
Right. His mental capacity for learning stuff is also expanding.
We're learning all the things, all the spells.
We're practicing for the third task, which is great, because that was one of my complaints about the second task, was that he was nothing. So incredibly unprepared for that.
I love the little bit about McGonagall giving them permission to use the Transfiguration classroom at lunch. Mm-hmm. And just because, for two reasons. One, it shows she trusts them to not destroy her classroom.
She trusts Hermione.
Yeah, that's what I put in my notes. All praise to Hermione there.
And she trusts Harry to an extent.
Mainly Hermione. But I think it's funny, too, that she has been walking in on them practicing all over the place. And it's just for the love of God, just here, go to my room. Just stop being where I need to be or I want to be to escape children. I don't want to find more children while I'm trying to escape children.
There's a little... It's a partially for Harry, too, because, let's be real, she does have an affection for Harry.
She does.
Given, he's in her house. These are her...
She wants him to do well.
He's her champion as the head of Gryffindor House. There's other reasons McGonagall... She's a competitive lady, okay?
Right. It just makes me laugh.
But anyway...
They're learning good spells.
Harry has mastered, at this point, the impediment curse, which slows down and obstructs attackers. Mm-hmm. The reductor curse, which is just a loud blast of solid objects. The 4-point spell, which is a Hermione suggestion, which is brilliant, which is basically your wand points in the direction of due north.
I need that, because I am terrible at directions.
You really do need that. He does struggle with the shield charm a little bit.
Yeah.
But what's an interesting note here is Ron does a pretty darn good job with the impediment curse. Mm-hmm. And we know that he is pining to be an Auror after Harry and Hermione have also gotten these compliments from Moody just being like, you guys would be pretty good oars. And Ron's over there like, me too, right? And Moody's like, so moving on. But to Ron's credit, he is doing a very good job with the impediment curse, or the impediment charm. So props to Ron.
Yeah.
Sirius is also giving his 2 cents by literally giving any kind of thought he can have as to how you get through a maze or challenges.
Just like keep your head about you. Don't lose sight of the end, and then we'll worry about the deeper. Something we didn't mention last chapter, but we also found out in the last chapter that he's been corresponding frequently with Dumbledore, which is... Dumbledore said he suggested the cave for him to live in. Which
is something we've figured. I mean, that was a safe assumption.
Well, remember back in, what was it, the second chapter, your favorite chapter, how he was like, I don't want to tell Dumbledore, that feels stupid. Sirius is not feeling dumb about sharing very important information with a very important man who knows very important things.
Sirius is the one telling Dumbledore mostly about Harry. Like,
exactly.
Hey, Harry's scar hurt the other day. You might want to check on that.
Yeah, so thank God for him.
Yep. So we get another Rita Skeeter article.
Harry Potter, disturbed and dangerous.
So in this article, Draco drops some real information here.
Yeah, we know he's friends with werewolves and giants, and he's
that's burying the lead.
Parseltongue.
Parseltongue is the lead. I'm like, wow, you're starting with the giants and the
It's part
werewolves.
of the facts that he mentioned. That and his scar hurts enough to make him like collapse and get out of class, which Rita, of course, said that this happens frequently and it's constantly happening. It's often. It's like, I think you need to check your adverbs there a little bit, ma'am. But,
You're still burying the lead.
He's a Parseltongue. Okay.
That matters. That matters a lot because of the connotations surrounding it. Yeah. And that's not a widely known fact.
Yeah.
That's a very secretive fact.
I mean, they suggest that Dumbledore must have hidden this from the public, which, whatever.
The thing about Rita Skeeter, you mentioned her use of adverbs, which is fine and fair. But also, what she writes isn't exactly untrue.
Right. I mean, there is a little bit of the bias of
There's embellishment.
Calling him so dangerous and strange that he shouldn't even be competing. But, like, she has gone to multiple sources. She went to someone at St. Mungo's to ask, is this a potential malady?
You wonder how she skewed their exact opinions,
right,
too.
Or how... there was a member of the Dark Force Defense League who she also talked to, Parseltongue. They're like, it's dark magic. I wouldn't necessarily trust people with that. So there is, of course, the fact that she's taking this accurate information, but pushing it all together makes him seem like he is this very, very scary man.
You know what these quotes from those individuals imply? That we know she embellishes her writing.
Right.
We don't know exactly what context she gave these individuals about the information they're giving either.
Right.
So I'm sure if you told that ministry official or the Dark Force defense member or whatever that, oh, by the way, I want to interview you about Harry Potter, he's a Parseltongue.
Right.
I wonder if he would give you different information.
Oh, what?
I'm not saying it would completely change his opinion on Parseltongues.
Right.
But he'd be like, well, it's Harry Potter.
Right.
Like, you can't,
Well, that's why they're all anonymous in their quotes. They don't want anyone to be like, I'm
surprised they're anonymous.
And you just said that about Harry Potter?
I'm surprised they don't read this article being like, whoa, that's not exactly what I thought this was about.
I mean, Ron and Hermione want to hide it from Harry because they don't want him freaking out about it for the, the third task. But Hermione was also like, how the heck did she hear you? You were at the top of the North Tower. Your voice wouldn't have carried all the way down. And Harry said something that makes me laugh literally every single time that I read this because I just hear it in such a dry, like, British humor. He said, the window was open. I opened it to breathe. Like, come on. That's so funny to me.
Well, okay. That's just...
It's accurate because we know her room is stifling hot and whatever.
And the perfumes and stuff like that. And the perfume,
but it's also just funny. She's like, yeah, I opened it to breathe.
I did like Dumbledore's line in the last chapter of like...
I fell asleep
in divination. He's like...
Understandable.
That's pretty understandable. I get it.
Makes me laugh. But yeah, Harry said like it seems like... she's using these magical methods of bugging. Tell me how she does it. And Hermione had a weird, dreamy expression come over her face, and she ran her hand through her hair, and it was also looking like she was talking to a walkie-talkie. And they're just like, what are you doing? And she's like, I gotta go to the library. And once again, it's like, Hermione, if you only took 5 seconds, even just to tell us your hunch about something, you could probably save people. I mean, like, remember the last time you didn't share a hunch? Like, you literally ended up petrified, That's
a very valid point that should not go unnoticed. However, I will come back at you with, if...
She doesn't want to be proven wrong. I get that.
No, but... not even that. I don't even think it's that. I think it's, without spoiling anything, if she thinks it is what it is, she doesn't know how Rita Skeeter's getting this information. She could be anywhere. You don't want to just spout things because
she could be right there to hear it.
Exactly.
I getcha.
So I think that's more of this particular situation, but you're not wrong in all of the other stuff that you said.
Like last time you didn't have the chance to share that information. You were
100% valid.
So
100% valid.
But it's bad habits and they die hard.
So then we get McGonagall coming over to the table.
She's also a legend. Like, I mean, she's like, Potter, the champions are congregating in the chamber, but the test's not until tonight. I'm aware of that, Potter. Just once again, come on. They're so funny. They're not trying to be. It's just a British humor.
I was going to say, I have said similar things in similar tones to athletes all the time. It's like,
I know.
Yeah, I get that. That's why I'm talking to you.
That's
like,
part of the fun is to sass them right back.
But she calls him she tells him that there is a family meeting for the champions. His families are coming in.
Yeah.
To which he automatically goes, "Oh, the Dursleys aren't here, so that's
not happening.
That's not happening." So he's going to literally leave the Great Hall, and
which is so sad.
Who pops out his head to be like, Harry, what are you doing? They're waiting for you. Cedric does that.
He's like, who the heck is waiting for me? It's the Weasleys. Of course it's the Weasleys. Mrs. Weasley and Bill.
Yeah, Mrs. Weasley and Bill specifically. Charlie wanted to, just couldn't get time off of work.
Yeah.
Which it's impressive that Bill did.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I'll tell you who was happy Bill was there. A certain Flora Delacour. Giving him the little eye.
Yes, Fleur is checking out Bill for sure. We also learned that Molly and Arthur had some late night strolls around Hogwarts.
They did. They got back at 4 a.m. Bill was like, what? You and Dad were out till 4 a.m?
As I do.
Just strolling around.
I do love the occasional rare name, and we get a couple of them here. We get Apollyon Pringle, who is the caretaker at the time that Molly and Arthur attended Hogwarts.
Which I'm sorry, just because it's Pringles, once you pop, the fun don't stop.
And we get Og,
the
gamekeeper before Hagrid.
Yeah.
So we get a couple of random names. Again, Apollyon Pringle, the caretaker, and Og, the gamekeeper before Hagrid. So there's some Harry Potter trivia for you that I will forget in 3 months. So
you won't remember it tomorrow.
That's fair. I won't remember it tomorrow. So on to the next chapter is how I prep. Anyway, so we get a couple of cool names. Harry takes them around the campus. It's a tour, which I love because they both went there.
Yeah.
But
don't you love that feeling of like going back to high school and just seeing what's changed and remembering the good old days?
Only because I had a fairly good high school experience. I totally understand people that want nothing to do with it anymore. But before they leave for this grand tour of Hogwarts by Harry, which includes the Beauxbatons carriage and the Durmstrang ship, which are cool, Cedric and Amos Diggory have kind of an interesting interaction with Harry and Mrs. Weasley specifically.
Yeah.
And Cedric just wants to fly under the radar. Like, he just wants to be Cedric Diggory. He doesn't want to be compared directly to Harry Potter every single chance he gets.
Well, especially because Amos is, like, loudly trying to be that, the parent standing up for their child of, you think you're so great, you'll Ced will show him, beaten him once before. It's like,
Well, he says it as like a proud parent at a sporting event, which is what he is.
Right.
But
also, like,
he says
aghast at, like, you know, you're overshadowing my child who has done something tremendous. I want him to get his moment in the sun, too.
Well, he's taken offense to the Rita Skeeter article that has portrayed Harry as the only champion, which, to be fair...
Understandable.
He has a point there.
Yeah.
Cedric is a deserving champion, as we've pointed out already. And then the second thing is he points out constantly that, you know, oh, Cedric's caught up to you in points. You know, he's beaten you once already. Like, it's the famous Harry Potter thing of, like, well, we can do everything that you can do, if not better. And guess what? My son is better than you at most things. And it's proven because he beat you in Quidditch that one time.
Yeah, but it's like when parents start to egg on teenagers or even younger than that, it's like, you've reduced yourself so low. Like,
well, and Cedric
is embarrassed by.
Cedric wants no part of this. He's like,
that's not his personality.
And he said it before, like, hey, Dad, there were circumstances.
Yeah.
I wanted to replay the game. Whatever. Again, people are going to get on me for hyping Cedric, but this is yet another example of the kind of human he is, of just like, I'm just a dude.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And that's, you know,
there's bits of this you don't understand. Just let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the interaction that I really love the most. And Molly actually stands up to Amos about Rita Skeeter's article. And
5 minutes later.
Well, right. That's where I'm getting. So Molly Weasley blasts Amos Diggory for kind of delving into that recent Rita Skeeter article where Harry is deranged and whatever and causing problems. And then literally a couple minutes later, Hermione shows up. And Molly gives her a very cold look and a cold greeting. And bless Harry for standing up and saying, like, Mrs. Weasley, you don't really believe that rubbish about me and Hermione. We're not dating. We're not a thing.
Which is very astute of Harry.
It's a great move by Harry.
It's one of his, I won't say rare, but it's one of those moments where he's like, he's reading women very, very, very
He's reading anybody well. This is the second time in 2 chapters that he's done something like this.
He's
he did
growing up. Aww.
He did it to Fudge in the chapter before where he called him out on something. And now he's doing it to Molly, calling her out on something like, Molly, you don't really believe... Which, can we just
the wording he uses is so perfect because it's like, oh, that was a ridiculous thing, right? You didn't fall for it. That makes it so that she doesn't necessarily have to get embarrassed and feel called out. But it also gives her the opening to be like, oh, no, I didn't, don't worry about it, and just, like, move on from it. No one gets embarrassed. No one feels like they're being yelled at. It's just, like, hey, that wasn't real. So, hope you can move on for, like, Hermione's sake, because she's not happy.
Can we just take a second? And we've gotten on this Molly Weasley thing with the articles, because, obviously, the Easter holidays, she slighted Hermione in quite aggressive way. Not so passive aggressiveness. But can we just say here for a second, of all the people who shouldn't take Rita Skeeter seriously, Molly's right on the top of the list because Rita has been blasting her husband.
Yeah.
We started this book.
Yeah, but she's just got that sweet spot for Harry of don't toy with his
emotions.
No,
I think she's got a sweet spot for drama reading.
That too.
She loves the tabloids.
Yeah.
Wait, but her husband has been in them. You know she writes fake well, not fake, I shouldn't say fake, but misleading stories.
People have their blind spots.
Molly, come on. You can't apply one to one thing and one to another thing.
But people do all the time.
People do, and she's a glowing example of it, but it's a little hypocritical at the very least.
100%, but
anyway.
Harry knocks that out of the way, so...
Not one of Molly's redeeming qualities here. But anyway.
Time for the third task.
The third task. So we get to the Quidditch Stadium, and it's much different than what they saw previously.
We have 20-foot high hedges, which is about 2 stories high if you're looking at a building.
That is correct. We get to the launching point, if you will, and Ludo Bagman is there, and he states that Hagrid, McGonagall, Flitwick, and Moody will all patrol the edges of the maze.
And they're going to rescue him if they need it, which...
They'll step in, yeah.
Yeah, like, okay, safety measures for this third task. I know you guys were complaining a lot about the second task not really having as many safety features, no guarantees, and I mean, unless you get like the mer people to
the mer people
help out, but this it does seem like it's important to have here. I would argue have more than 4, but maybe they're just thinking 1 per champion. I don't know.
I think they're thinking 1 per champion as if they'll follow their way through the maze. I think that as challenging as the second task is, and it was challenging, and there's a lot of chance for peril there. I do think the mer people were that outlet because they're perfectly suited for it. But also, potentially, this maze has, I guess, more things that can kill you per capita, I guess. Like,
yeah, you want to go over all the things in the maze?
Yeah, so the obstacles in the maze that Harry comes across, let me just say that. 12-foot-tall Dementor that Harry casted the Patronus charm on, which then fell over.
Well, Dementor?
Realizing it was a Boggart, because Dementors don't trip and fall over. There's a gold mist that ends up flipping floor and ceiling.
Which apparently is called Limbo Mist. But yeah, it reverses gravity, so he feels like everything's upside down. It's
purely meant to disorient an individual and panic them into doing something false or misleading or paralyzing them from fear or whatever have you. It's interesting in that it's seemingly harmless. Yeah. Yes, innocent's a good word.
Yeah. There's the Hagrid's addition to this.
Which is not innocent. That is an enormous blast-ended scroot.
10 feet long.
10 feet long, which we'll get back to that in a second.
Yeah.
And there's also a Sphinx, which we will also get into in a little bit more detail later on. And
each other.
And finally, a gigantic spider. And yes, there's always the option of... These are competitors. You're competing for something, so there's always the risk that one of the others will attack you.
Yeah.
I will say this. Cedric and Harry enter the maze together, and they immediately split at the first fork, and Harry notices that his path is remarkably clear, and Cedric ends up running into him a little bit later in the maze, after running into one of those 10-foot-long scroots and being like, I just barely escaped one of Hagrid's...
So the sleeve of his robe was still smoking, and he was visibly shaken.
Yeah, and skipping ahead a little bit, but you get Harry running into another one, or potentially, I guess, the same scroot, later on in the maze, and you figure out how difficult these things are to actually attack now.
Yeah, I mean, he said how it has like a giant scorpion tail and how there's the shell and he's only able to get it because there's like a little bit of the underbelly exposed.
Yeah, he had to get underneath it.
That's where he was able to hit it. But yeah, Hagrid should basically not stop breeding creatures. You're producing things that will destroy you.
I mean, to be
well,
fair...
imagine the irony if one of these things killed Harry Potter. What do you think Hagrid would do?
Not take it well.
No.
He would not take it well. But, to be fair, Scroot, a great creature to put in this maze, because it's challenging.
Yeah. But the Boggart, obviously, Harry has seen that before.
That's a cool thing to put in the maze, too, because obviously...
It's a smart addition to have.
You're literally facing your greatest fear.
It's
an obvious call to add
it's a good
one or multiple, because obviously we're only following Harry here.
Right.
In the midst of this, we get a scream from presumably Fleur, and so there's other things in this maze,
right?
Or multiple versions of the same thing in this maze.
Yeah.
So it's not just Harry who gets a pretty easy ride, all things considered. The Sphinx.
The Sphinx.
Let's talk about the Sphinx.
Sphinx, just in case you don't know, it has the body of a lion and the head of a woman. And they like riddles.
They like riddles. If you know the mythology of a Sphinx, that's the whole thing. You need to pass the riddle or they will attack you.
Do you want me to read what the riddle is?
I can do it.
Okay.
First, think of the person who lives in disguise. who deals in secrets and tells naught but lies. That's part 1. Part 2. Next, tell me what's always the last thing to mend. The middle of middle and end of the end. Part 3. And finally, give me the sound often heard during the search for a hard-to-find word. Part 4 and the last part. Now string them together and answer me this. Which creature would you be unwilling to kiss? Mm-hmm. It's a solid riddle.
Mm-hmm. Makes you think of The Hobbit with, not Frodo, sorry, Bilbo and Gollum doing their riddles back and forth down deep in the caves.
Mm-hmm. It's a really nice riddle. I could tell you when I was first reading this riddle, just based on the last clue, that last sentence, my mind immediately jumps to Dementors. Because obviously you don't want to kiss those. That's how your soul gets sucked out. And honestly, I thought that's what Harry was going to jump to, given literally a Boggart just turned into a Dementor. But he doesn't. He kind of works it out. Person who lives in disguise, tells not but lies. Spies do that. Okay.
Right.
And
he couldn't figure out the middle bit, but he did figure out the last chunk with the because he was
See, that would get me because I would think
Yeah, I would think
is mine. Like, if you haven't figured that out on the podcast, mine is
It's also a thing. But with the middle of middle and end of the end,
that's clever.
That is clever. It's great wordplay. I appreciate it. The middle of the word middle is the D. The end of the word end is the D. Same as it's the last thing to mend. Mend also ends with a D. So you string it all together. Spy D is a spider.
Yep. So
Which I wonder if it was foreshadowing what was about to come, because literally the next thing he comes across are those giant spiders.
I fully believe it is. I think it's meant to be like,
get yourself mentally prepared.
Yeah, this is a hint as to what the next thing is.
Yeah.
And Cedric and so before we get to that point, Harry hears a commotion in literally the hedge next to him, like on the other side of the hedge, and he tries to get through it, and he gets through it, and he sees Cedric and Crumb in a scuffle. And
Crumb yelled Crucio.
Yeah, Cedric yells and ends up being tortured via Crucio. Mm-hmm. Harry stuns Crumb, and Cedric essentially tells him, like, he snuck up behind me, he had to want me already. Mm-hmm. And they talk about Fleur. Did you hear Fleur scream? Mm-hmm. I think this might have happened to Fleur already.
I mean, Harry had the good point. He's like, using an unforgivable curse on a human being means a life term in Azkaban. And the Triwizard Tournament Cup is not worth a life sentence in Azkaban. So what could Crumb have been thinking?
Now, you have a lot going on in Harry's mind here, because he does start thinking about winning this thing. Mm-hmm. And he does start thinking about, maybe a little selfishly, like, hey, I could be the champion here.
Yeah, what would Cho think if he did that?
Right. But also, he just hung out with Crumb. Right. Granted, it led to some weird circumstances. Right. But that wasn't Crumb's fault. Right. Crumb was attacked. Right. So, and then he gets Sirius's letter being like, what are you doing walking off with A, a former champion, or a current champion, and B, one from Durmstrang? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
And now so Harry's like probably thinking about all this, going like, oh, this is messed up. Mm-hmm. Like, maybe I didn't think about this all the way, or whatever have you.
Yeah, so he did that, then he saw the Sphinx, and then the two of them...
Really quick before that, I think it's an important character point to say that Cedric and Harry both make a decision. And that decision is to, like, what do we do with Crumb? Who's stunned. Yeah. He is out. Yeah. There are things in this maze that are not going to be kind to him.
We could finally discover what the Scroots eat.
They make a conscious decision to save Crumb, even though I don't think it's fair to just gloss over the fact that Crumb just put a torture curse on Cedric.
Right.
And Cedric agrees to send up the sparks because he doesn't want Crumb to die.
Right.
Let's not just skirt over that. I know I'm the Cedric guy. I get it. and it's Harry and him. But Anna and I have talked about how these champions do have some similarities. These two specifically have some similarities in how they deal with people and who they are as human beings. So I don't think it's a mistake that they make this decision despite what they just saw and felt Crumb doing. Mm-hmm. That's a big moment to not leave him there. Other people would have left him there.
So basically, they're not bad people.
Minimally, yes. Killing me. Just skirting over such a character moment.
Yeah. Okay, so they do that, and then he sees the Sphinx, and then the two of them both
reconnect again.
The Triwizard Cup, and they're both running towards it, but Cedric is a little bit of ahead.
This is the fourth time they've reconnected.
Yeah, but Harry sees the spiders first, and they do the best they can to take him out, but it's a combo between the two because these spiders are so strong.
You're skipping past the character moments. Harry notices the spider first and then alerts Cedric to it.
Right.
Cedric's ahead of him.
Well, you could argue the same thing of Harry going through the bush to try to go save Cedric. He could have just
continued on.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure, but so you have Harry alerting Cedric to it, who then escapes the spider's attack. Mm-hmm. Spider gets distracted by Harry, goes to attack Harry. Cedric attacks the spider. He could have kept going at the same time.
Right. And
he turns back and saves Harry. And then it takes both of them using a stunning spell to knock this spider out.
Stunning spell from Cedric. Expelliarmus from Harry.
Fair enough. But it takes...
Don't take away from his Expelliarmus, Dan.
It takes 2 spells to knock this spider out. And then you have this moment between the two where Harry is injured from the spider.
Right.
Because he got lifted up and the pincers were actually in him. There's this description.
He's bleeding. His leg is
there's
broken.
There's an ooze also.
Yeah.
Which I'm presuming is acromantula venom.
Yeah.
So he's injured badly.
Yeah.
And then they have this back and forth about, you deserve to take the cup. No, you deserve to take the cup.
And I mean, Cedric, like he said, he didn't move. He stood there looking at Harry. Then he looked at the cup, and there's the longing. But then he turns himself away from the cup. He's like, "No, you deserve it." And he's like, "Well, stop being noble. I got help. I got help. I got help. Okay, we both got help with this. And clearly, every champion has had help with this. We can move past that." But Harry got the bright idea. Let's just both take it. I mean, we're both from Hogwarts. Who cares about sharing the money? Who cares about sharing the glory? Which is honestly such a great move, because if you want people to be, I mean, this whole time Hogwarts has been torn about which champion to support and whatever. What better way to end it than to have it just be one combined Hogwarts win? Half the school is going to be excited because, hey, our house won, and the other 2 houses are just going to be happy because their school won. It's a win-win-win, except this cup doesn't seem to be just a cup.
Well, it had all we hear is they get the feeling of their hands being clasped to it.
Right, the
they
jerk's
can't open
somewhere around his navel,
which suggests, as we've heard earlier in this book, of maybe a port key is in play.
Dun dun dun.
Before we end the chapter, I do just have a little note on the Triwizard Tournament, as I did a little bit of a deep dive. I'm not going to get into a whole deep dive. I'm just going to give you the numbers here.
Numbers.
So, in Triwizard Tournament history, you have Hogwarts tying for the victory here. Mm-hmm. But in Triwizard Tournament history, the wins and losses that I am aware of, or the Wizarding World is telling us, Bo Battens has won 62 of these tournaments.
Nice.
Hogwarts has won 63 of these tournaments.
Dang, neck and neck.
Neck and neck. So quite the rivalry between the two. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many Durmstrang has won, if any. Mm-hmm. And we can do the math, and I will save that for an episode with Jen. But we can do the math because...
She's the best one to do the math.
So obviously we know that it's been...
We know how many years, essentially, it's gone. And
we know that it's been defunct for a while.
Yeah.
But so 62 and 63 is 125. So 125 tournaments have been done. It's every 5 years. You can do that math.
Yeah.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know how many Durmstrang would have been able to fit in there. Maybe they have none. For all we know, maybe it's just a Hogwarts Bobatons thing. Who knows?
It would be so sad if they don't have a single win.
Who knows? But that's the math from the Wizarding World on Triwizard Tournaments, as our two champions from Hogwarts have clinched the tie in this particular maze task.
Good for them.
So we will leave that here, and we will go to the spoiler section, where we have many more things to discuss. So we will be right back.
Kill the stag!
All right, we are back with the spoiler section of Chapter 31, The Third Task. I have not ranted about this task, but we are going to get a little bit more into it. I do want to just point out a couple of things. One, this is essentially, this third task prep is essentially the beginning of the DA, of Dumbledore's army.
Oh, 100%.
Because he's learning stuff that really matters. Like the impediment curse and the reductor curse. Reducto, for those in the know. And then obviously the stunning spell is kind of important.
Yeah, just a bit.
A little important.
The shield charm, too. I mean, my God.
Starting to practice that, yeah. Even though he hasn't gotten that yet,
Yeah.
It's important that has started. This is essentially the start of the DA.
Yeah.
Him, Ron, and Hermione are starting it right there. So, I think you have a note about Malfoy and Rita.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it in the non-spoilers, but Ron did catch Malfoy talking to his hand while Crabbe and Goyle were on the lookout, and we know Rita, the bug, which does make me wonder, like, how she's able to ask questions. Does he just, like, ramble to her, and she's like, awesome, go for it? Like, you know, she's a bug. How does she get her...
I assume she's passed info to Malfoy.
Maybe.
And been like...
Prep these...
Just tell me these things.
Talk to me about Harry Potter. You will go on for hours. She's probably like, kid, shut up.
Hey.
But we know that, like, Ron's like, that's weird. And Harry said, he looks like he's talking to walkie-talkie. And Hermione doesn't recognize it because she's like, well, technology doesn't work around here. There's too much magic. But the bugging part reminds her, like, oh, yes, this is how she could potentially be getting her interviews. She's just, like, serious. She's an animagus.
It's an advantageous animagus for her as well.
Explains how she was able to get up to the North Tower.
So, a couple of quick spoiler thoughts there. But we get to... I think we both had this note of Harry's path was very clear. He only really had to hurdle a couple of...
Well, things that they knew he could handle. He's done Boggarts before. Like, a Skewett probably is really hard to totally keep out of the way, so that's understandable. The Sphinx, they trust him to be clever.
He's familiar with Scrooge.
Yeah, like, the Sphinx... I mean, I think it's a shame he probably will have forgotten by the end of the night to tell Hermione that I used logic. Remember your first year when you used logic? I got to use logic too.
I gotta tell you, if I'm Crouch Jr., I'm worried about the Sphinx. I'm directing him away from the Sphinx because it's Harry Potter. He couldn't even figure out he was good at flying for the first task.
But he said it was the fastest path, so he did take that. But, and like the mist, I mean, it was a challenge, but simple enough. But yeah, it comes across as this path is so boring. It's empty. It
is boring.
Like,
I'm a little disappointed in reading this task because I want to see more. Yeah. I want to see him challenge more. Heck, I'd love to see Fleur, Crumb, and Cedric and all of their routes through this because they obviously had much more treacherous routes.
Which also goes back to the fact, like, I wonder what the audience can see of this. You know,
just in my
walls is what
in my head. If I'm sitting in the stands of the Quidditch stadium, you might have a little aerial view. Mm-hmm. But I'm also seeing like flashes of light, like little like fireworks, but not up in the sky, like in the maze.
This is really where they need like one of those Hunger Games situations where everything's televised and everyone can see every angle.
Can you imagine like just seeing all of a sudden a part of the maze just light up brilliantly because he let the Patronus go.
Well, at the same time, could you imagine a camera angle where you see this like dark creature looking like a Dementor coming slower and slower,
Getting
towards
gored
you,
by a stag,
and then being gored by the stag, and then it's tripping. Oh, and you'd be like, yeah, good job, Harry. Like, if it's just like Muggle technology. If you could film this and have it aired, it would be so much more interesting to listen.
I think there is
watch.
a little bit more drama involved, though, when you can't see what's going on, and then all of a sudden flashes happen, and you're like, oh, something's happening there. Something's
but
going down.
also, if it had been televised, they would have very clearly seen at the very, very end how the portkey took them out of there. And
Sure.
like, oh, shoot. Yeah, so.
Obviously, Barty Crouch Jr. is orchestrating a lot of this, and he's keeping Harry relatively clean, as clean as he can. And he's putting the other champions in a little bit of peril.
Just a little bit.
It is a little bit of peril. He's the grand architect of essentially this entire thing.
Yeah.
Obviously. But
he probably attacked we know
via
that he,
Crouch,
right,
or via Crumb.
Right, and we know Crouch put the Imperius Curse, so that Crumb would then do Crucio to Cedric.
Right. This was not obviously Crumb's doing.
Yeah, he's not that dumb.
Well, he's
not risking Azkaban for...
He's not that type of person.
Right.
I mean, like, let's back it down all the way to that root cause.
Right.
Him, Harry, and Cedric are all very similar people. I spent the non-spoiler ranting about Harry and Cedric's commonalities of who they are at their core. Crumb is very similar. He is not a malicious person.
And I would argue at her core Fleur too. She's not...
Sure,
she's shallow in various times, but like she's not...
A little indignant.
She's not the person who's going to be like attacking each other just for the sake of it.
She hasn't shown specific animosity or aggressiveness towards other champions.
If anything, like all four of them have become to some degree friends. Yeah.
Especially like Fleur and Cedric have become very friendly.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, obviously not Crumb. It's Crouch working through him, which definitely adds a certain wrinkle to it. It adds a certain drama, like your Hunger Games comment. A little Hunger Games-esque where people start turning on each other. And I think in the movie that as much as we kind of have our nitpicks about how boring Harry's path is, it's 1,000 times worse in the movie because nothing ever happens.
Is this why I have also blacked out that part of the movie?
There aren't Scroots. there isn't a Sphinx. There's not even a golden mist. There's nothing like that. But the
does he come across anything then?
The trick, he comes across Crumb and Cedric dueling.
That's it?
But the flip is how they turn it in the maze, as Michael Gambon tells you in a very ominous way. It's like you might change in the maze.
Oh.
You might change who you are.
I feel like that's such a cop-out.
It's a cop-out in that you don't have to spend a bunch of money on visual effects. But it's also a cop-out because literally I've spent this entire episode saying
their characters
the importance,
are not gonna change.
Yeah. Their characters, their core,
right,
their souls are so...
Well, that's why the
important.
Cup chose them for this.
Right. And the idea that, their character can change, I shouldn't say easily, because I guess the maze is a powerful entity in that movie. But still, it kind of takes away from what you're trying to build. But anyway. So you have a note here about Harry and Cedric going forward beyond here.
Yeah, I mean, we know that the Cup takes them to the graveyard, and Cedric is in his last minutes of life right now, so it's haunting for Harry, for the reader, for everyone to realize that Cedric is choosing his death by agreeing to take the cup with Harry at the same time.
His Hufflepuff fairness is what does him in. Like his fierce
desire for justice.
Yeah. Is what ultimately does him in. I'm going to call you out here.
Oh.
You in your notes have Cedric's decision haunts Harry, quote, possibly forever.
No, not quote. I said probably.
Probably. Sorry. Well, still. Harry, sorry, I already crossed it out. That's why I can't read it right. So Cedric's decision haunts Harry probably forever, which I crossed out and wrote, definitely. It definitely haunts Harry forever. Like, totally, 100%, as it should.
Well, I was thinking about this the other day.
Talk about therapy, my goodness.
I was thinking the other day about how every time Harry goes through some moment, it's like the biggest moment, but until the next biggest moment.
I think that's something we said from like book 1.
Yeah, but like we know in the beginning of book 5, he's having nightmares to the point where even Dudley is aware of who Cedric's name is, which says a lot. But like, yeah, he has that, but then the next death he has of his godfather, and then the next death, and the next death, and he's just like, I don't know if this is the most haunting just because, like, this is the first one he witnesses, which, because of this, he gets to see the Thresholds, even though that's a whole other question mark of should he have seen those already, but we'll get there later.
I think it's the most haunting for a couple of reasons.
Because he chose it?
Because his decision of, like, let's do this together is what caused it. So it's a him decision that Cedric went along with. But also, Cedric is young, talented, bright,
he has
handsome.
His whole life ahead of him.
Whole life ahead of him.
Yeah.
And it's cut unfairly short.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the crux of this whole
and
thing.
And for literally no reason. Like our breakdown says, right? Kill the spare.
Spoiler alert.
That's all that he's thought of is just a spare body, a spare witness, so let's get rid of him. Now we can get to business. It totally undermines the importance, the value that Cedric's life had, which is sad. And
I think Cedric's death is the one we're seeing as a reader for the first time. Mm-hmm. We're visually seeing this.
I remember like I said, at the beginning of this book, when I got this book, I remember it was the summer, it was beautiful outside, I was reading it outside. When I got to these chapters, I don't care how sunny outside it was, I was like, this is dark. So dark.
But it's a larger example of we don't see all of Voldemort's kills. Mm-hmm. And honestly, most of them are treated very haphazardly. Mm-hmm. He gets what he needs from them and discards them like they are nothing.
Right.
We don't see that a whole lot. Here, we get it. And we see just how flippantly it's done.
Well, that, and he's a child.
So I think that's what gets Harry, is just the callousness and coldness of it. Mm-hmm. Here is this champion of Hogwarts, who everybody likes. Mm-hmm. Everybody likes this guy for an earned reason, and Voldy is just so whatever. His life is forfeit. Mm-hmm. It means nothing. Mm-hmm. And I think that hits Harry of like, that's why it's that's part of the reason why it's haunting him, is just like, you just grew up 10 years in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot to this.
Well, it's just everything happens so quick. He dies so quickly. Now he's being bound by Wormtail. He's got to assess the new situation of his location and what just happened and the death that just happened. And then, here's Voldemort. And also we're taking your blood. And now the world has changed because Voldemort is back. And it's just so much to process at once.
It is. It's a pivotal moment. Mm-hmm. And it does change Harry forever. And it changes the world forever because of the events that follow it immediately.
Which is why it's good that when, at the end of the year feast, when it's black as opposed to house colors, that Dumbledore does first honor Cedric. Like, that is a worthy honor. Right to do it.
In our intro.
It is in our intro.
That's a spoiler in the intro, but we cut it short so you don't know. Creative editing.
Look at you just pat yourself on the back there.
Thank you to our good friend Drew, who does a lot of assistance to making those intros and those break sounds.
Yeah, they sound awesome.
Really do appreciate it. Check him out on his F1 podcast, Outlap F1. Check that out. Yeah, I mean, that's essentially the chapter.
Yeah.
And
it's just darkness from here.
We have officially started down that roller coaster. We are screaming towards the end of this book.
It's such a blatant shift of you're going to grow up and you're going to grow up fast.
And, the next chapter title is not foreboding at all. It's called Flesh, Blood, and Bone.
So morbid.
Not at all ominous.
I can't wait to listen to it.
So we will be back next week with that episode. And I can't wait for it. We're at the end of this book, and I've loved Goblet of Fire.
Crazy. It feels like we just started it.
It doesn't. It doesn't. It's been a long time. But yes, we are winding down to the end of this book. So please let us know your thoughts and comments on this episode, this chapter. What do you think? We want to know. Comment on Twitter and Instagram. Give us a review on Spotify or wherever you're listening to this podcast. We really, really appreciate all that support. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back next week. Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hogwarts a Pod.